Average Joe's Drive-In is proudly sponsored by the Maine Cannababes. The Cannababes are a charity group of pro-cannabis women from the state of Maine who are bringing worthy attention to various causes in the medical cannabis community. This year, they launched their very first Maine Cannababes Pinup Calendar, which they are taking pre-orders for as we speak. All the proceeds from the calendar are going to worthy charitable causes. If you are interested in purchasing one or finding out more about the Cannababes, you can go to their website, www.maincannababes.com, or find them on most major forms of social media like Facebook and Instagram. If you order a calendar and enter the code word Average Joe's Drive-In, you could win a chance to get an autographed picture of your favorite Maine Cannababe. Once again, put in the code word Average Joe's Drive-In for a chance to win an autographed picture of your favorite Maine Cannababe.
Welcome to Average Joe's Drive-In,
Your weekly podcast on movies, music, games,
and other things entertainment related.
Now, your host,
DJ Washburn.
Welcome to a very special Friday the 13th edition of Average Joe's Drive-In. And with me is my best buddy in the whole wide world, Mr. Pete Farrar. Pete, how's it going?
It's going pretty good, man. Thanks.
We've been watching some of the Friday the 13th films, and we decided after we'd been going back and forth for a little bit on which ones to watch.
A little bit,
and how to go about doing it. We were gonna do different ones than we ended up doing, and we were gonna like record after each one. Then we just decided to watch all three of the ones we picked and just went back to back with them. We took notes, so class, be prepared for our random babbling and fun times.
I haven't taken notes since college. I can't even read my own writing.
Yeah, so yeah, you might have to bear with us if we have to take a second to figure out what the hell we were talking about on some of these. But
and I didn't bring my glasses. So look at this. No matter how far away I am, I still can't tell what I wrote.
So we've been planning on this for about a month or so anyway, when we found out that this October has a Friday the 13th, and it's been a long time since I can remember a Friday the 13th falling in October.
It's also a week from my birthday.
Yeah, Pete's getting old. Old and experienced, wiser. So, not just that it's Friday the 13th, but the Friday the 13th film franchise is so beloved amongst horror fans. And over the years, if you include the remake, there's been 12 films. And I can't think of another franchise that has that many films in it. I mean, there's some that are close, but I think as far as horror movies go, that's got to be right. That's got to be the most, or pretty damn close.
Those are like Final Fantasy numbers,
Oh yeah. So part of the there's kind of a mystique about these films. They've been around since 1980 when Sean S. Cunningham started the original Friday the 13th, and that's an iconic film, but there was no Jason in that. It wasn't until part 2 where we got to see Jason. And that's where we decided to kick the film series off. We decided to start off with Friday the 13th, part 2.
On a June night in 1980, Friday the 13th, 12 of her friends were murdered. Why should Friday the 13th, 1981 be any different? Friday the 13th, Part 2. The body count continues. 14.
All doomed. You're all doomed.
15.
God.
16.
Help!
17. 18. 19. 20. 21. 22. 23.
Sandra? Jeff?
The day you count on for terror is not over. Friday the 13th, Part 2.
So, I call this one Friday the 13th, Part 2, where we harken back to the days before cell phones, where the shorts were high and the counselors probably were too.
Without a doubt. You see that in the movie.
So, you know, we wrote down random stuff here, so this doesn't necessarily go in order, but I'm gonna let Pete start this one off because I think he took more notes on 2 than I did.
I did. I really like 2. It's one of my favorites because it's Jason. Even though he's wearing a bag on his head, so what? He looked all right. He was still kind of menacing. I like to call him the hillbilly Jason because that's exactly what he looks like. He's right out of Deliverance and Cabin in the Woods. No, not Cabin in the Woods. Yeah.
We were talking about the town that dreaded the town that dreaded sundown, which was a film that came out in the early to mid 70s, if I remember correctly. And I've never seen that film, but that film cover is so iconic because the guy is wearing like the burlap sack on his head.
Right.
So
One eye.
we were discussing whether this might be the reason why they ended up going to the hockey mask in Part 3.
Yeah.
And
Makes sense. There might have been some legal issues with it.
And I'm not sure, and I've never really looked into it because I know there's a documentary about the film called Crystal Lake Memories, which I haven't seen, and I'm sure some of our questions may be answered in that. So I need to find that and watch that.
I'm going to look that up. Okay. Here's my biggest thing, and I noticed this in 2. It came to mind in 2. The timeline when Jason drowns to when his mother goes on the killing spree, because in Part 1, because later on in the franchise, I can't remember if it was I think it was Jason Takes Manhattan. They show a flashback to Crystal Lake, and it looks like it was in the 60s. You know, 60s, maybe early 70s. So Jason was, still a boy when he drowned, but if Part 2 takes place 5 years after, so Jason must have had to have been at least 14, maybe 15. I'm being real conservative with this and say he was probably 15 when he drowned. So he would be, but you never know. It never says how long it takes between his drowning and her killing spree. Was it the year before? Was it a couple years before?
Right.
There's never really a definitive answer in the movies unless somebody came up with it on their own or officially or something. I'll probably have to look that up. But that's just something that popped into my head, and I really didn't want to look up stuff while I'm trying to watch the movie.
Yeah, no, and I agree, and that's one thing about some of the films, especially the earlier films. There doesn't seem to be a lot of, like, as far as the continuity thing goes, it seems to be kind of just like whatever the director decided he wanted to do until you start getting up to like Part 4. Yeah. And then from there up they kind of start to lay down like a solid foundation of like Jason's mannerisms and different things like that, and just the story kind of starts to piece together a little bit more. And
The continuity, the consistency from film to film stayed pretty true. And from part 4 on, as far as I can see.
but the first 3, there was definitely liberties taken with the whole story.
Yeah.
So my questions go together, and both of us brought this up. Why does Jason need a curtain for his toilet? um, it's kind. We know he's got the whole junkyard chic thing going on there with the cabin, the garbage chic thing, and
Garbage feng shui. That's what it is.
so that was just like a random thing. And also, this was a question I had. Did he build it, or was it gathered from materials? Also, we see later in the film, he's obviously not a carpenter when he touches the wall and the whole ceiling falls down in his mother's room.
Right, but he did have a hammer.
He
killed the sheriff with a hammer. And he know how to swing a hammer.
Apparently, he's not a good nailer. He can't, drive a good straight nail. Apparently, he can slaughter camp counselors like a knife slicing through butter, but when it comes to hitting a nail straight on and driving it into a piece of wood, not so much.
Well, he's not going to learn that because he was a shut-in. His mom kept him home,
That's true. Yes,
where's a deformed, mentally retarded kid going to learn those skills? And staying at home, no, he's not going to. So.
Yeah. No, I agree.
But I think he did an okay job with what he had.
Hey, he made it work, okay?
See, I found the positive. He did. He made it work. But still, why the curtain?
He's got an eye for decoration. He uses.
Unless he has company coming over. I don't know. Planned on maybe having company sometime. Be like when he retires, like, I'm done with this whole killing thing.
His mother was in the back room. Maybe it was so Mom didn't have to see him go to the bathroom.
Her room had a door.
That's true. That's true.
Not a door, but that's creepy.
That is creepy.
The whole thing's creepy.
Well, yeah.
And part 2, this is one of the things that it just baffles me. Our prophet of doom, Ralph. Crazy Ralph. Telling everybody, don't go to Crystal Lake. Don't go to Crystal Lake. You're all doomed.
Doomed. You're all
But yet he
doomed.
goes out there too. Pedals out there. It's like, what do you think? You're not going to get killed? Jason, going to leave you alone? Because you're, warning people? He's probably pretty pissed at you for warning people not to go out there.
That is true. But it going back to, on that subject right there, but you go back to the whole thing of what was Jason doing from the time he drowned till after his mother gets killed. Why didn't he go to find his mother?
Right.
I know we're analyzing this way too hard, but
well, no, I mean, I'm sure when he came out, if he drowned per se, comes back, which is, that's never explained either. But I think he might have partially drowned, went unconscious, but I don't know.
He has some sort of amnesia. Maybe his killing of his mother brings him out of it.
That could be, very well could be.
We're trying to create backstory here, people.
Trauma.
There's a couple things. There's scenes. I have no idea what that even means because I can't read my handwriting. So I'm gonna miss that one. But we were talking about the wheelchair death scene, and that just gets me, jumps the hell out of me every time. And I've seen this film several times.
So cool. One of my favorite Jason kills of all time. And it was creative, Kudos to that. 2 was pretty cheesy. I think 2 is literally the cheesiest of them all, as far as cliches and bad acting and it set that was where the mold really came from for all these cheesy camp slaughter movies.
And we were talking about the
2.
fire scene at the beginning, with them at the fire scene talking about Jason and the whole legend. How many especially slasher horror films, have you seen since then that either start with that or it's an integral part of the story for the film?
It's such a cliche thing, you have to do it.
It feels
It has
weird
to
if
be
you
there.
don't.
Yeah, you have to do it. It's too cliche. If you don't have it in there, people are probably going to like, well, where's that cool scene of them talking about the backstory of something and piece together? I want to see people getting scared and no.
But something we were
It's
talking
a
about.
lost art.
But there was something else we were talking about in this that this film did do really well, and that was foreshadowing.
Yeah.
And you were the one that was actually mentioned that got me thinking of it. They set up reasons for so much of the stuff later on in the film and why things are there and what is actually going on.
Yeah.
The,
Yeah, the kid, he has the spear and the mask. It's like, come
her
on.
putting the chainsaw on the shed, the
Right.
car not working well.
Power's out in one cabin.
And they have a great reason why, because at the beginning there's like 20 counselors there.
Right.
And they decide to go to the bar while some of them stay back, which whittles the number of slaughter fodder that Jason has to go through to a reasonable number. So it's not so overwhelming where the group could just overtake it by sheer number.
Right.
So yeah.
The foreshadowing started in that one, and of course, then 3 with the hockey mask, and the kid with the hockey mask and the spear gun.
Shelley.
The
And that was the thing. While I like part 2, it's definitely not my favorite in the first. Really, it's not even in my top 4 favorites of the franchise. But it sets so much of the groundwork for the future films and it's our first Jason appearance. So it's like you almost gotta watch this to kick off a Friday the 13th marathon.
Yeah, definitely.
So we're going to move on to the next film in the series, which we decided to skip 3 and go with which is my second favorite film of the series, which would be the final chapter, or as I like to call it, except not one word, nudity.
3 times before, you have felt the terror, known the madness, lived the horror. But this is the one you've been screaming for. Friday the 13th, the final chapter. Jason is back. He moves like a shadow, dark and silent.
Sorry you changed your mind?
He never utters a word. He doesn't even seem to breathe.
Where the hell's the corkscrew?
He simply, mindlessly, mercilessly kills. But now, Jason's reign of terror is over. Friday the 13th, the final chapter. Jason's unlucky day.
This is the start of the Tommy Jarvis trilogy, which encompasses 4, 5, and 6.
Okay, I'm gonna go on a little rant here about some of this stuff, because it was just the morgue scene. It's like you don't see him. You see the door kind of come open a little, and then the shot of the guy, and you never see Jason come out of the box. And it does cut away a couple times, so obviously that's when it supposedly happened. But the door never really moved. Right. It was only open just a little bit. There's no way you could have squeezed out of there without either, But it's Friday the 13th. It's supposed to be fun like that. And, I may be getting nitpicky. It was an OCD thing with me. It's because you don't actually really see it's the same thing.
Oh yeah, and like any of the films in the Friday the 13th series, there's a lot of faults with every one of them. Pretty much, there's issues.
He can teleport.
He can, there's every film we could go through and be really nitpicky about stuff because we're horror fans and that's what we like to do. That doesn't stop my love and enjoyment of them, but it's just there's things, especially when you go to review and analyze something like this, you really are paying attention more and you pick up on these things and it's like,
oh yeah,
I didn't really think of it that way before, but some of my favorite things about this one is Crispin Glover is the least Crispin Glover of any film that he is in. And anybody that knows who Crispin Glover is and has seen Back to the Future, The River's Edge, any of those films, Willard, anything he's done, this is like contained Crispin Glover where you see hints of Crispin Glover, but not like full blown wacky, crazy Crispin Glover.
It's just the dance scene is the best.
The dance scene kills me every time. It's the best.
That is called the Crispin, by the way.
If you have never seen this film in particular, which I would be shocked if you were listening to this podcast and haven't seen it, but you need to watch that. And the next time you are at a wedding or reception, you will be the hit if you do this dance. So learn it.
Oh,
you
it's the best. He's got moves.
And another thing, well, I'm going to get through my couple favorite things, is Corey Feldman watching the girl next door strip. That would probably have been me at that age. Just, it just cracks me up every time. Pete already mentioned the Crispin Glover dance. We get the and yeah, that was pretty much for that stuff that I wanted to point out that I really love about this. Just the quirkiness about that. Anyway,
I'm pretty sure this was the last film in the franchise that did the classic ass shot of girls walking down a trail and there's a shot on their asses. I think this was the last one they did that did this in. It's kind of sad to see it go. If I ever made a Friday the 13th movie, I would have the ass shot in there.
And as males that grew up in the 80s, we looked forward to that every film. That was just, I agree there. Just kind of a little write-up thing here. This is my second favorite film in the series because I think it has the best characters and they're the most likable out of all of them. Like a lot of the Friday the 13th films, you don't really get to know the characters at all, or they're there for the kill count. They're there for the kill count in this, but you kind of get to know their personalities a little bit, and they're not just like such generic assholes or cliches that you hate the characters, or they're just whatever,
Yeah, these were a believable group of kids in this movie. Some of the actors were in there. What's her face? She was in Weird Science, and Crispin Glover, and the other kid.
You got Corey Feldman in there, and it's just, to me, that's just something compared to a lot of the other ones. The use of the score in this film is I think the most spot on of any of the Friday the 13th movies. Where they used it, they didn't overuse it, and they used it to enhance rather than just to be there.
Yeah. Jason in this one is really this is when Jason starts to come into his own. He's much more violent. You can just his body language. You can just see the anger and the hate when he's doing his kills.
He feels like you mentioned when we were talking about. He feels mad and menacing.
Yeah, he's pissed off. Very pissed off in this movie, and that's when you get to really see his strength come up. Like in 2, he's more like a hillbilly that's kind of running around hiding, and I'll kill you, and that's it. But this Jason, when he starts to get scary, and that's what I like.
This, out of all of the Friday the 13th, except for maybe part 1, I think probably has the best gore. As far as
without a doubt,
and there's some good gore in the other films, and there's some iconic scenes, but as far as just visceral, like cringe type gore.
This one has
There's so many hand injuries in this, and they just Crispin getting ripped off the door where he's like crucified. Just
and when Jason takes the machete between the fingers. Come on.
God,
that's just like a paper cut to the eyeball.
That's just yeah. I also thought this was one of the best acted out of all the Friday the 13th films.
If that's really anything.
The camera work is excellent.
Yes, they started doing a lot of cool camera work.
And the humor doesn't seem so forced in this one. It flows a lot. It flows very naturally in this one because it seems like a bunch of friends actually hanging out and how we'd kind of rag on each other and give each other shit. And that's what it reminded me of. So the humor comes out of that instead of just being one-liners. I mean, you do have Crispin Glover's dire situation. And
he's a dead fuck.
Yeah, which he gets, tormented about the whole time by Teddy. But I love the dynamic between him and Teddy. It's just,
they're buddies, but they hate each other, but they love each other. And it's,
we all have friends like that. So, I think everybody has those friends like that. And also something about this film that I absolutely love is not the very end scene, but the final scene with Tommy just losing his shit.
Yeah, and I pointed that out to you when he's losing his shit. That so reminded me of Walking Dead when Rick kills Gareth in the church. I was like, wow, that's probably where they got that from. except the Walking Dead one, way more blood flowing, but
yeah, oh yeah, no, I definitely agree. Is there you got any other stuff on this one?
The transition shot thing we were talking about during the
yeah, there's kind of I noticed it, and I've noticed this in a lot of the Friday the 13th films, and actually a few other early 80s, late 70s horror films. Sometimes, especially when there's a distant shot, there seems to be like an out of focus graininess to it, and but I was thinking about it, and we kind of were talking about it a little bit when I brought it up to Pete, was it always seems to happen right before Jason makes his kind of big introduction into the...
Yeah, it's not a cut. It's just usually a transition scene, and it's not like him watching through the woods. It's just some shot of the woods. There's some camera motion maybe, or it's a static shot, but it always seems to be a little out of focus. And
it almost seems like almost like unfinished. Like there's it was like the raw shot that they never quite... But it's in almost all the films.
It was like they were rolling while they were trying to focus or something,
Or it's just it's kind of weird. It almost looks like them going from like a 16 millimeter to 32.
Yeah, that's exactly what it looks like.
It looks like it's like almost like a different transition of film, because obviously these films were all done back in the day when everything was done on film.
Amen.
So you see that weird... That's what it looks like to me. It looks like you're going from like a higher resolution film to a lo-fi film, and it's kind of a weird thing. And it's something, like I said, I've noticed before, but that reminded me of it because there's the scene of him kind of looking down, and it's like, man, that. And another movie I noticed that in is in the movie Predator.
Yes.
There's that scene where Arnold is looking up on the cliff and the Predator's jumping down. You have that weird kind of off focus.
Yeah.
So I kind of wonder what that is. I've never looked into this. And, Pete was a photojournalist for many years, so he has camera background.
I wouldn't put that in any of my stories. I would have gotten caught hell for that.
There's also, and Pete wasn't aware of it, and I wasn't aware of this until a few years ago. There was originally a different ending shot for this film.
I just found this out tonight. I didn't know anything about this until TJ mentioned it during the film, so we had to stop and I had to watch it on my phone. But yeah, it sucks. I'll blatantly come on and say
and the director even says that he's like, "Oh, we made the right choice." But
yes, they did.
If you're a fan of this film and you have never seen this, it definitely is worth watching because the main actress and the director are kind of walking you through what was going on.
Yeah, it's cool. It's a cool talk through. We're not going to tell you what it entails. You're going to have to go watch it yourself.
Go on YouTube. It's on YouTube, and find it and check it out if you are a fan of this film. Now, before we talk about the final film that we're going to talk about, I wanted to comment on the way that the Friday the 13th remake, like most remakes, is kind of one of those things that seems to be hit or miss, I think, with a lot of people. This one seems to, I think, have a little more love than some of the other ones because I think they did a lot of things right with it. But one thing that we were kind of noticing and mentioning about was the fact that the remake took elements from the whole franchise, like different things from the whole catalog, and threw them in different little bits and pieces of storyline and kind of weaved them in.
I'm a big fan of the reboot. I thought that was a really good film. And Derek Mears as Jason is just ungodly awesome. And I love Jason in that movie the best. That's my favorite Jason.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a big Kane Hodder fan. I've got an autographed picture of Kane Hodder. Big fan, but Derek Mears was just, I mean, when I think of Jason, I think of Kane Hodder Jason. But my favorite Jason is Derek Mears by far to watch on film.
Because I think the biggest thing with Kane Hodder is Kane Hodder brought consistency to that character.
He did.
His mannerism.
Yeah.
A lot of the mannerisms that everybody associates with Jason didn't even come along until Kane Hodder was in there.
He did. He owns Jason.
That was,
he really did.
And that's one thing I loved about the movies. Honestly, 7's probably my third favorite of the franchise. 8, 9, and 10 I enjoy, but they're definitely not my favorites. But he is easily my favorite Jason. Those are some of my favorite Jason moments. But the films themselves were some of the worst in the franchise, as far as I'm concerned. Other than 7. 7 I do really like a lot.
Yeah, 7 to me is right there. After that, they really started to suck. Because I've only seen Jason Goes to Hell once. I saw it in the theater, and I was so pissed I had to pay to see that piece of shit. I was really kind of... Even Jason X was better than
Jason X was fun. The thing that killed that for me was the PG-13 rating. Like, I enjoyed it, but there was things about it that I think would have been better if it could have been a little gorier.
Probably.
I like the premise. The super hulked out Jason.
I thought it was kind of cool. The post-apocalyptic world. Jason Voorhees is frozen. That's fucking cool.
And just a little side note that I wanted to bring up before, like I said, we get into the last film is how much the Friday the 13th franchise ties into Return of the Living Dead.
Oh, my God. Actors galore.
You have Tom Matthews, who plays Tommy Jarvis in part 6. You have Miguel Nunez, that is, I can't remember his name in the film, but he was Spider in Return of the Living Dead.
Yes, he was.
And then you have the guy that plays Suicide, and I really can't remember what the hell his name is off the top of my head, though I do know it. Who is Suicide in Return of the Living Dead is the guy that axe murders the guy who becomes Jason in part 5.
Yep.
Son, who's at the home. So you have those 3 actors in basically back-to-back films, 5, 6, and 7, and they were all in Return of the Living Dead.
Yeah.
Which is just doesn't mean anything, but it's an interesting little tidbit, if you're a fan of both movies, and I am a huge Return of the Living Dead fan as well.
Oh,
so.
yes.
Eventually, one of these days, I think Pete and I need to do like a Return of the Living Dead 1, 2, and 3 and talk about those sometime, because that's
I've never seen 3, so that would be
and I picked up the Vastron Special Edition Restored Blu-ray of that, and it looks awesome. I still haven't watched it yet.
Fancy pants.
Yes, sir. That was one. Hey, I got a really good deal on it. So hey, so last we're gonna talk about part 6.
This is between me and Jason. All you need to know is Jason's dead, right? Seeing his corpse ain't gonna stop the hallucinations. I gotta be sure. Jason's alive. We dug up his body. We've got to do something. He's even more powerful now.
Aren't you the kid whose mother and friends were killed by that maniac? I'm sorry about what happened to you and your folks years ago, but no one in Forest Green wants to be reminded of what that maniac did here. That's why we changed the name. People want to forget this was Crystal Lake.
Maybe he was telling the truth. Just because our parents keep telling us that Jason was only a legend doesn't mean it wasn't true. What if he did come back here?
No matter what you call it, it's still Camp Crystal Lake to him.
No, there's a scary man!
What scary man?
You're gonna be sorry you didn't listen to me. Jason is out there. He's looking for me. They have to be warned, Sheriff.
Are you sure this is gonna work?
Jason belongs in hell. I'm gonna see he gets there.
Best of the bunch.
I like to call this one It's Alive, It's Alive, Saved by the Jason Voorhees, or How Jason Got His Groove Back.
Saved by the Bell.
Because
Saved by
the cast,
Bellcast.
the cast reminds us you can pretty much pick out the cast of Saved by the Bell in this film. Just
There was really no Preppy, though.
no, because I think Tommy was the Tommy Jarvis of the group.
It was just the girls and the guy. One guy, wasn't it? Just the one guy.
Yeah,
Or-
but I'm saying that you had Tommy.
Oh, yeah.
Tommy could be the Zach character.
Uh,
The other guy was definitely Slater.
Oh, yes.
Horseshack is Screech.
Yeah.
I mean, you go through, but just that's kind of a little interesting side note.
Horseshack.
This one is my favorite of the series.
Mine, too. Definitely my favorite. It's got two of my favorite things. Jason and paintball.
The reason that this is where the film started to get a little cheesy. I mean, get really cheesy, but they did it in a way that it worked really well because the film become self-aware of itself.
Yes.
You notice it making references to different things.
Right.
And it doesn't take itself as serious as the other one, and it's just a lot of fun. So you have that balance of just the brutalness of like part 4 and 5 mixed with the transitioning that it went into in the latter half of the series.
Yes. And there really was a lack of gore and nudity in this movie. And this movie would have been PG-13.
I think today, oh, for sure.
Oh, without a doubt.
But there were some things about this one. We were both mentioning the Foley work, and this one is on point. It's so good. It makes Jason so menacing. The way they use the Foley work with his footsteps and just his movements and things. It's pounding. It's just that rhythmic. He's coming for you, and I want to talk a little bit about the opening. This is my favorite opening sequence of any of the.
It's so cool to watch. But I remember seeing this in the theater, so I'm kind of giving away my age here. I just remember when we saw Horseshack, everybody's like, "It's Horseshack!" It's laughing. I was like, "Wow, I've never seen that happen in a Friday the 13th movie where everybody's like, hey!" And sorry, we all did it in part 5.
Oh yeah,
when we saw the kid from Different Strokes there.
Oh yeah. The thing about this one is one of the reasons I love this opening out of all the Friday the 13th movies I can think of, except maybe Jason Goes to Hell. This is like the most just to the point. Let's get the ball rolling, and here's Jason.
He's back. The
whole scene with Tommy and him and his buddy, played by Horseshack, in the truck and going in it. It's giving you a little bit of a backstory, If you were just jumping in, the cemetery is creepy as shit looking.
Yeah.
And they get there and it rolls, and this is where it starts, and bang, you're right into it. The other ones, it always seems to like the first 20 minutes is just building up to us seeing Jason.
Right. This is 5 minutes in. We got Jason.
We get zombie Jason
Zombie
because Tommy
Jason.
decides to have a flashback because he's got post-traumatic stress disorder, obviously.
Well, yeah.
And he's ripping off a metal fence post and like lancing, and of course the lightning hits and everything goes wrong from there. Twice.
2 strikes. It hits it twice, which is.
So I wanted to bring, and I brought this up. If you really think about this is the classic Frankenstein
It is.
comparison because the lightning is bringing the dead back to life.
I remember a friend saw this before I did, and he told me about it. And he was like, dude, it's so cool. And I was like, well, how's Jason come back? He goes, I can't tell you. It's so cool. You'll love it. And I saw it, and immediately, as soon as I got home, I called him, dude, it was so cool. I saw it.
It was, and I just love that because that was kind of a cool way to bring Jason back after part 4. Because, he's definitely dead after part 4. There was no coming back from that one.
No. The music in this movie is just great, too. I just, all those big horns, ba-bum, bum, ba-bum, bum. It's like, what the hell? And there's, they put like some big booming sound effects onto the music.
It's the most... Well, and we were discussing this too. It seems like out of all the Friday the 13th films that this had the biggest budget. Mm-hmm. I think so. I'm not 100% sure, but it feels like it. Because
7 might have topped it.
The sets on this one, I mean, before it looks like they shot everything like on location at places that were already set up. This one looks like it was constructed specifically for this film.
Yeah. Well, I should say this is the first one that looked like it had a big budget.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I'm pretty sure Jason X had the biggest budget of all of them. I could be wrong, though.
This is the first one that I remember with Forest Green being in it because they decided to change the name of the town.
Yeah.
And, but we were talking about things being self-aware. You have the caretaker looking at the camera and talking about things.
Breaking the wall.
You have the girl in the car with her boyfriend going, well, I've seen enough scary movies to know that a guy in a mask standing in a road in the middle of the woods. Yeah.
Which was cool. Being a big fan of that and seeing that. And people have to remember, back then, there was no YouTube. There was no leaked videos of anything. We saw a preview on TV, and that was it. If you had a VCR, you could record it and watch it over and over and over again. But now it's, movie trailers are everywhere. You don't have to go far to find them. They're leaked all the time. So we would get excited to go see these movies. And when I saw that movie, particularly the opening scene, there's several scenes in this movie where it was just like, jump out of your chair. Because that's what we did back then. We cheered for Jason. And people would, and we were there. It felt like a family. Because, people are there. They're there for Jason. And Jason only. And when Jason makes his big comeback, everybody's clapped and applauded and stuff. You don't see too much of that in the movies anymore.
He's like the atypical prototype anti-hero.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And
he just needs to slam some beers together and he'd be Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Pretty much, yeah. And the thing about this is part 6 has so many iconic scenes. You were talking about, and me and you both brought it up at the same time. There's a scene of him standing on the RV, skidded RV, and just walking towards the camera, and the flames are coming up, and the way the light's hitting him, it's like, oh my God, that's amazing.
Yeah, that's such an amazing. I used to have that as a screensaver for a long, long, long time. I don't know why I don't.
And another thing that this one did this is the first time there are campers at the
real
camp.
Children at
real
the camp.
children,
Camp.
Not just the camp counselors. There's actual children there,
which kind of makes it real spooky to me. It's because there's and they didn't use the kids just as kids being at camp. The kids, there was actually like main character kids, and they had cool dialogue. A lot of it was funny, but then there was the scared little girl, and the 2 boys that were always talking to each other. I love that kid, the older kid there, the taller one. He cracks me up. He's like saying, "You're in big trouble, dude." So, another that goes back, of course, to the
being self-aware.
Yeah, being self-aware.
What did you want to be when you grow up?
I love that. What did you want to be? The kid just looks at him like, ugh.
There's so many things to like about this film. It's it's like I said, it feels like almost the perfect transition between like them trying to be real serious and mysterious. I just rhymed, hey. They're serious and mysterious about things to they realize what this film was. They're having fun with it. Right. They're being self-aware. You know, all the streets and buildings are all named after famous horror directors or horror icons. There's just so many cool little things.
Cunningham Road.
Karloff's Garage. Carpenter Road, you know.
Right. Right. This is probably the funnest movie to watch out of the whole, series. Because the scene when they're chasing Tommy through the cemetery, when he's going to show him that he dug up Jason, the dolly work is just amazing. And the camera, the crane, and everything. I had crane and dolly shots in this. It created such a pattern of confusion that it's like, is he going to make it? Is he going to make it? They're zigzagging this way. They're zigzagging that way. And then there's the moving shots, and it's just intense, and the music builds up and up, and then he tackles him. And you're like, oh shit, he's not going to be able to show it to him.
Every time I see that scene, though, I want to hear Benny Hill music in the background. Just because that's what it reminds me of every time.
Benny Hill music, that'd be good. Yakety sax, that'd be awesome.
So we, so those were the three films that we hit on. And before we go, I wanted to, talk with Pete about this. This franchise is almost 40 years old. Well, it's 37 years old, going on 38 years old. It is still so beloved and dear to the horror community. Maybe more so than any of the other franchise-type horrors. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love, the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, the Halloween movies, the Hellraiser movies, the friggin' Child's Place here. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Howling. There's so many of these films that had like over 5 or 6 movies. But to me personally, Jason always feels like the safe pick for me to go to when I want to watch those
Everybody
type of
knows
films.
who he is. Everybody knows
who Jason is. That hockey mask is so iconic.
Yep.
And it's so, and I think the film, even though the film series has like progressed and changed over the years, and there's been different things added and this and that, people still love it from the get-go to even the bad ones. They still enjoy them. They're fun movies, even if they are shitty.
I didn't enjoy Jason Goes to Hell. I'm sorry.
I personally, I don't hate that one. It's not my.
I've seen it once.
It's not in my favorites. I've only seen it a handful of times.
Probably because it's got that guy that was in the Rocky movie, and he annoys me. I hate that guy.
But there's there's something to say about a franchise that's 36 years old. People are still talking about it. People associate the friggin' holiday with the film. I don't know how many times when a Friday the 13th rolls up, everyone's like, "Oh, time to binge watch the series," or something goes on.
It is a holiday in a way, and a lot of people celebrate it.
It's Happy Jason Day to all you folks that are listening out there.
I brought my mask with me.
Yeah, it's so it's a lot of fun. It was a good time, and I've been trying to get Pete down for a while. We've been trying to work stuff out, and this was a fun way to do it, talking about a film series that we both love so much and have so much fun with. And I hope you guys enjoyed this episode and had fun with us and maybe learned a few things, or we brought up a few things that you, didn't realize before, maybe hadn't noticed. And I hope you guys are enjoying your Friday the 13th-a-thons out there, because this is going to be tomorrow, of course. So, but weigh in with us and let us know what you think about those 3 films. And you can do that on the Facebook page at Average Joe's Drive-In Podcast. I'm on Instagram at Thomas Washburn Jr. You can hit me up on Twitter at TWJ Author. I also have a homepage, www.thomaswashburnjr.com. I don't post on that one quite so much. It's kind of there. It's a work in progress. I would like to thank my sponsors, the Maine Cannababes. They have a new website up with all kinds of new merch. And you can go check that out, www.maincannababes.com. When you order, there's a little...
I don't know who that new model was, but she's hot.
I'll make sure I tell Jenny. So if you hear this, Jenny, Pete thinks your new model's hot. But I wanted to say when you go to submit an order, it says add note to seller. All you got to do is type in Average Joe's Drive-In, and you will win a chance to get a free autographed picture of your favorite Maine Canababe. So,
Nice.
So, there's things. And it's all for a good cause because all their money goes to charity causes. So pick up a calendar. They have thongs and T-shirts and hoodies and cups and a billion other different things. And so, yeah, go check out the store, www.maincanababes.com. Once again, you have been listening to Average Joe's Drive-In. I want to thank Pete. I want to thank Pete for coming down, hanging out, and watching movies because we hang out all the time anyway. But this was a good way to do movies.
I'm sure I'll do more.
For sure.
I'll be back.
We'll have some episodes this year, probably discussing Game of Thrones and Walking Dead and all that good fun stuff, and Stand Against Evil because that show fucking rules.
You're welcome.
And Pete's the one that turned me on to that one. So. Once again, you have been listening to Average Joe's Drive-In. I'm your host, TJ Washburn. With me is my buddy Pete Farrar, and I will see you sexy animals on the flip side.